My mom is a systems engineer at NASA. They laughed at her. They assumed she was making up stories, until her mother arrived with a badge that changed everything. This is a tale of quiet determination, unexpected revelations, and the power of simply showing up. Hey squad, welcome back to the channel. We're here with another highly interesting story that will inspire you to stand confidently in your own truths, and to back those who do the same. Smash the subscribe, hit like, and drop your city in the comment. Let's dive in. Talia Jefferson was never the loudest student in Miss Lawson's 5th grade class. She preferred to sit in the middle rows, quietly taking notes and avoiding the spotlight. Yet, on a Tuesday just after recess, Talia found herself at the center of attention in the most unexpected way. That Tuesday, the air in room 14B smelled of pencil shavings and fresh hand sanitizer. Miss Lawson clapped her hands for order, then announced, "Time for our What My Parent Does presentations." She beamed at the class, clipboard in hand, while the students groaned good-naturedly. One by one, the kids stood and shared. A girl proudly described her dad's firefighting adventures. A boy boasted of a mom who worked at the local bakery, handing out free pastries. Another student mentioned a cousin in the Army, and despite the cousin being only a year older, he received enthusiastic applause. When Talia's name was called, she stood with a small index card clutched in her hand. She cleared her throat, glanced at no one in particular, and said with calm resolve, "My mom works at NASA." For a second, the room fell silent, until giggles began rolling through the desks in waves. They weren't loud guffaws, but the kind of murmuring laughter that grows the more people realize they can't understand what they've just heard. A few disbelieving voices piped up, "Wait, you mean the space place?" "Yeah, right, she's making that up." In that moment, even Miss Lawson's reaction was telling. Her eyebrows shot up slightly, though she quickly smoothed her face back to neutrality. Talia saw it, though. Her teacher, too, found it unlikely. Talia repeated, voice unwavering, "My mom is a systems engineer there." Miss Lawson's tight-lipped smile spoke volumes. She offered a perfunctory, "Thank you, Talia," then hurried on to the next student as if nothing had happened. Talia sat, cheeks burning but eyes dry. It wasn't the first time she'd felt dismissed. She'd told the truth, but no one believed her. Nearby, a crumpled piece of paper landed on her desk. Theo, one of the class clowns, leaned over and snickered. "Does she clean the bathrooms or something?" Talia said nothing, ignoring the pit growing in her stomach. She had learned from her mom that letting other people's ignorance define you was the quickest way to lose yourself. Dinner at home. Talia's house was a small, 2-story home in Mobile, Alabama, a pale yellow structure with green shutters and a porch light that always came on before sunset. That evening she entered quietly, dropped her backpack by the stairs, and went straight to the kitchen. Her mom, Dr. Renee Jefferson, was cooking stew in a bright red pot, the aroma of onions and garlic drifting through the warm air. As soon as Talia walked in, her mom greeted her. "You're late," noting it without judgment. "I had to stay and help wipe down desks," Talia mumbled. Renee turned off the burner and faced her daughter. "Something else happened, didn't it?" she asked gently. Talia's lips parted, but the words took a moment to form. "They laughed," she finally said. "I told them you work at NASA, and the class laughed." Renee's gaze softened. "They didn't believe you." Talia nodded. "One kid even said maybe you just clean the place." Her mother exhaled, a controlled breath that conveyed both calm and simmering frustration. "Did you say anything back?" Miss Lawson moved on. In another home, maybe there'd have been anger or calls to the principal. But Dr. Jefferson had faced her own share of quiet dismissals. She simply asked, "Did you feel like you said something wrong?" "No, of course not." "Then that's their ignorance to own, not yours." Talia stared at the tabletop. "It still hurts, though." Her mother came around and gave her a light hug. "I get that. When I first told people I wanted to work in aerospace, my guidance counselor suggested secretarial work instead. She thought I was being unrealistic, but I kept going. If you want, I can come to your class on Parent Day." "You'd do that?" Talia asked, eyes brightening. Renee shrugged. "I have some time off saved. Plus, I'd love to see your classroom." "Wear your badge," Talia said firmly. "And that black blazer." Renee laughed. "The one you hate? Why not?" They both giggled, a shared harmony in the kitchen. As they served themselves stew, Talia felt a little less alone. She knew her mom wasn't just out to prove something, she was there to stand by Talia's truth. The big day. Parent Day arrived faster than Talia expected. All week, she endured side glances and the occasional whispered joke, but she stayed polite, not revealing her plan. Meanwhile, Miss Lawson rearranged the desks into a horseshoe shape and placed a plate of store-bought cookies at the front of the classroom for a festive touch. By 9 o'clock, parents started filing in. One wore a mechanic's jumpsuit, another sported medical scrubs, and a few had business attire. Murmurs of, "Nice to meet you and thanks for coming," filled the air. Talia sat near the middle, hands folded in her lap, waiting. When a tall figure in a black blazer and crisp slacks finally entered, the entire room fell silent. The only sound was the shuffle of Miss Lawson's papers. "This is Talia's mother, Dr. Renee Jefferson," Miss Lawson announced, sounding momentarily unsure. Welcome." Renee smiled politely. "Thank you. It's good to be here." She glanced around, her NASA badge swinging from a lanyard around her neck. No one dared speak. Then came her introduction. "I'm an aerospace systems engineer at NASA. I help plan and design missions, working on everything from flight systems to data transmission for lunar and Mars projects." Several students leaned forward. A boy in the front whispered, "Whoa." A girl near the back clutched the desk, eyes wide. Renee let that sink in before she continued. "I wanted to share something else, though," she said. "My daughter Talia mentioned I work at NASA last week, and some of you laughed." The room grew even more still. "But I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I just want you to remember, sometimes the most incredible truths sound unbelievable until you see them for yourself." She pointed to a large diagram she'd taped to the whiteboard. "This is a schematic I helped work on. Space travel is complex, but the principle is simple. We push boundaries by daring to see what others can't yet imagine." Renee scanned the faces of the students, each one now fully absorbed. "So, when someone tells you something that sounds too big or unusual, take a second before you doubt them. Brilliance doesn't always come wrapped in what you expect." At that, she stepped back, allowing Miss Lawson to regain control. But the teacher didn't speak right away. She just stared, slightly stunned. Talia, meanwhile, allowed herself a tiny grin. She saw the astonished expressions on her classmates' faces and felt a rush of validation. Finally, Miss Lawson cleared her throat, thanked Dr. Jefferson, and called up the next parent. But the day felt different now, charged with a new kind of energy. Talia noticed how no one snickered or whispered during the next presentation about a car dealership. It seemed like the entire room had been reset. Quiet shifts. Over the next few days, Talia walked into class with the same old backpack and slightly scuffed shoes, but she carried herself differently. She didn't expect praise, and she didn't get any grand gestures. Instead, she noticed subtle changes in the air. A few classmates, like Kennedy and Samira, came up to her at recess. "My mom said your mom was amazing," Kennedy said softly, fiddling with a corner of her sweater. "We had no idea NASA was that intense." "I Googled NASA stuff after school," Samira added. "It's pretty cool." Talia smiled. "Yeah, it is." They didn't say more, but they also didn't leave. For the first time, Talia spent recess actually conversing with them, not about the event, but about everyday things like new phone apps and weekend plans. It felt normal. Theo tried to avoid her gaze in the hallway. The boy who had made the bathroom cleaning remark seemed to shrink in on himself whenever she passed. A handful of other kids who hadn't laughed out loud but hadn't believed her either, now looked at her with new respect. Monday morning, as the class packed up, Miss Lawson quietly asked Talia to stay behind. Talia's heart fluttered, but she stayed calm. "I owe you an apology," Miss Lawson said, voice low. "You stood here and told the truth, and I didn't support you the way I should have. I brushed past it. I'm sorry." Talia blinked, taken aback. She'd never imagined an adult apologizing so plainly. "It's okay," she managed. Miss Lawson shook her head gently. "No, it wasn't okay. But I'm learning too." It wasn't a perfect fix. Some students still harbored doubts. One boy, Dean, muttered NASA kid under his breath every time Talia walked by. But she no longer felt like she had to prove anything. Whenever he did it, she just kept walking. That sort of quiet self-assurance was new to Talia, and it seeped into other parts of her life. She raised her hand more in class, even if she wasn't 100% sure she had the right answer. She started doodling rocket shapes and satellite designs in her notebook margins, not ashamed to let people see. Reflections of a NASA mom. What her classmates didn't know was that Dr. Renee Jefferson had faced her own battles. Growing up in Baton Rouge, she'd been the girl with secondhand glasses, devouring any science book she could find at the local library. She'd once told a high school counselor she wanted to design rocket systems. The counselor had smiled condescendingly. "Maybe aim for office administration," she'd said, as though planning missions to space was out of reach for a black girl from the wrong side of town. But Renee had pressed on, winning scholarships, interning at an aerospace company, and eventually landing at NASA. All those years of subtle doubt had prepared her for the day she'd walk into Talia's classroom. She didn't raise her voice or rattle off every award she'd ever won. She simply showed them who she was, giving Talia a blueprint for how to handle life's challenges. A new kind of confidence. That Friday, another shift occurred. During morning announcements, Miss Lawson mentioned the classroom's Career Dreams bulletin board, where each student could post a small note about what they wanted to do when they grew up. She read one aloud. "This is from Talia Jefferson. I want to build machines that go places no one has been before. Someone has to figure it out, and I think I can." No laughter followed. A couple of students looked at Talia, curiosity replacing any earlier derision. She didn't look back. Her eyes stayed focused on her notebook, as though what mattered was her own conviction, not their approval. Once the bell rang for recess, she stood up to leave. A friend whispered, "That was so cool," and Talia just shrugged, smiling a bit. That was the real power in the moment. She wasn't waiting for the class to believe her. She believed in herself first, and her mother had backed her up when it mattered. The kitchen epilogue. Back home, Talia spent evenings at the kitchen table, drawing up new ideas. She sketched solar panel petals that could rotate like sunflowers, following the sun. She showed them to Renee, explaining how it might collect more energy. Her mom nodded, impressed. "I like how you're not trying to dazzle anyone," Renee observed. "You're just solving problems." Talia's cheeks warmed with pride. "It came to me in math class. We were talking about geometry, and I thought about angles." Renee laughed. "You're already thinking like an engineer." They didn't talk about the class much anymore. There was no need. Talia had moved on, setting her sights on bigger goals. But she did ask her mom one question on a quiet Friday night. "Do you think they believe me now?" Renee paused, drying a dish. "Some do, some don't. But that's not your responsibility. Your job is to keep being you." Talia nodded, considering that. In her mind, she saw the moment her mom had walked into the classroom, the hush, the stares, and finally, the awe. Sometimes one short moment can shift how you see yourself forever. She still had the same old backpack, still lived in the same modest house. But something inside her had changed. She carried a quiet resolve, knowing if she believed in her dreams, it didn't matter who else doubted. Weeks later, the school made a year-end memory book. Each student had a superlative, like most likely to become a famous singer or most likely to win a marathon. Under Talia's photo, a classmate had written, "most likely to launch something into space." This time, there was no sarcasm. It was a recognition of who she was, and more importantly, who she could be. Often, a single door opening and the unexpected presence of someone who refuses to conform to others' limited expectations can change everything. Talia learned that believing in yourself first is the foundation of all achievement. And for every kid who dares to say, "My parent works at NASA," or "I can do the impossible," the lesson is universal. Don't let anyone's disbelief shrink your dreams. Thank you for watching this story. May it inspire you to stand confidently in your own truths and to back those who do the same.